They buried this method, not because it doesn't work, but because it works too well. In 1925, a woman wrote a book that was banned from circulating in academic circles, not for heresy, not for madness, but because the words on those pages activated something in the human nervous system that science would only be able to explain 90 years later. This book is called The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. And what you are about to discover in the next few minutes is not self-help. It is the exact mechanics of how your mind collapses realities. If you feel there is a gap between what you desire and what appears in your life, you are not broken. You simply never had access to the operating manual. Most people spend decades adjusting their behavior without ever touching the one thing that controls all of them, the invisible architecture of belief. Stay here, because what I am about to reveal now separates those who observe life from those who build it. Florence Scovel Shinn was not a mystic disconnected from reality. She was a New York illustrator who began to observe something disturbing. People living in scarcity repeated identical patterns of thought. Different people, different cities, different circumstances, same mental signature. What she called the law of mental action and reaction is exactly what modern neuroscience names directed neuroplasticity. Every thought you think with emotional intensity carves a groove in the prefrontal cortex. Repeat it enough times, and that groove becomes a highway. You begin to realize now that what you call bad luck is actually the precise execution of a code you installed yourself without knowing. The question is not whether your mind creates reality. The question is, what reality is it creating while you are not paying attention? Quantum physics discovered something that Florence intuitively operated before being observed. An electron exists in all possible states simultaneously. The act of observing collapses this wave function into a single concrete reality. This is not a metaphor. This is a measurable phenomenon. You, by directing your attention with emotional clarity, are not asking the universe. You are collapsing possibilities into facts. Florence described this as speaking the right word at the right time. Science describes it as heart coherence, when heart and mind enter synchrony. Your body's electromagnetic field expands up to 3 meters around you, influencing the environment. HeartMath Institutes spent over 30 years documenting this phenomenon. You are, biologically, an active node within the field. Florence taught that there's a vast difference between saying, I want prosperity, and prosperity is my divine inheritance, and I receive it now. The first sentence activates the search system. The second activates the receiving system. It tells your brain, this thing is already mine. The emotional brain does not process grammar. It processes certainty. A sentence built on certainty triggers a different neurochemical response. Notice that internal voice saying, this is naive. That voice has a name in neuroscience. It is the prefrontal cortex in defense mode. Florence called this voice the internal adversary. You cannot overpower a belief. You can only replace it with one that carries more emotional weight. The reticular activating system filters roughly 99% of all incoming information. What passes through is determined by what your mind decided is important. By subscribing to this channel now, you are sending a measurable signal to your brain that the search for clarity has become your priority. Florence identified 4 mental patterns that block divine supply: scarcity, unworthiness, mandatory struggle, and delay. None of these patterns were generated by you. If we're inherited, absorbed from authority figures in childhood. Neuroscience calls this deep observational learning. The good news is that the same mechanism that installed these patterns is capable of uninstalling them. Your brain is clay that responds to directed pressure. Florence's method was an active practice of aligning thought, word, and expectation. She called this holding your vision. Do not try to manifest. They operate from a fundamental orientation toward reality that makes abundance the default expectation. The physical shortcut to achieve this harmony is detailed in the description. the Midas manifestation system. Access it to tune into your new reality today. Because understanding this is not enough. The practice has to become a frequency. And the frequency has to become you. The word miracle usually pushes away more analytical minds. But allow me to redefine this term with technical precision. A miracle, in Florence's vocabulary, is any manifestation that surpasses the expectations of the installed belief system. Not magic, not divine exception, not the suspension of natural law. It is something far more precise and far more accessible. In neurological language, it is when a new belief circuit, more expansive, more permissive, becomes dominant over the old one. This is not a gradual process. It does not require years of meditation or decades of therapy. The brain, when given the right conditions, can reorganize a belief architecture in a single moment of sufficient emotional intensity. This process has an identifiable biochemical trigger, the release of oxytocin and serotonin in high coherence patterns. The mind does not gain new information in these moments. It gains new access to information that was always there. Florence observed this empirically. She recorded hundreds of cases where the shift occurred immediately after a specific change in the internal state. Florence's core method was what she called decrees, high-impact self-affirmations with emotional anchoring. The difference between an affirmation that works and one that doesn't lies in three variables: specificity, emotional charge, and verb tense. Specificity bypasses the brain's skepticism filter. The more concrete the statement, the harder it is to categorize as fantasy. Prosperity flows to me now in expected and unexpected ways. This structure activates receptivity circuits in the immediate present. Florence worked with this decades before cognitive linguistics existed. She didn't have fMRI machines. She had something more valuable: the results. Florence taught that intense attachment to the result blocks manifestation. Gate, this generates a frequency of lack. The nervous system does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you are broadcasting. Detachment is not the absence of desire. It is the presence of certainty. A person who knows their package will arrive tomorrow does not spend the day anxious. They simply make space for the arrival. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that reality is the faithful mirror of your dominant internal state. The one whose nervous system is calibrated to receive will find it appearing through what looks like luck or coincidence. When desire and belief become coherent, what the world calls a miracle becomes your new biological normality. What you felt here was not information, it was recognition. A part of you already knew this. Your word is your wand, your attention is your instrument, your internal state is your point of creation. To not miss the next expansion frequency, make sure you are connected to this field. Subscribe, activate the notification. We will be back soon.